Can someone recite Shloka 4.8?
Yes, Mataji.
Yes. Padmavati Mataji, please go ahead.
Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya
No, we will repeat after you.
Okay.
Paritranaya sadhunam. That's how you should do it.
Okay. Paritranaya sadhunam.
Paritranaya sadhunam.
Paritranaya sadhunam.
Next line.
Vinashaya dushkritam.
Vinashaya cha dushkritam.
Dharma samsthapanarthaya.
Dharma samsthapanarthaya.
Sambhavami yuge yuge.
Sambhavami yuge yuge. Once more.
Paritranaya sadhunam.
Paritranaya sadhunam.
Vinashaya cha dushkritam.
Vinashaya cha dushkritam.
Dharma samsthapanarthaya.
Dharma samsthapanarthaya.
Sambhavami yuge yuge.
Sambhavami yuge yuge. Once more.
Paritranaya sadhunam.
Paritranaya sadhunam.
Vinashaya cha dushkritam.
Vinashaya cha dushkritam.
Dharma samsthapanarthaya.
Dharma samsthapanarthaya.
Sambhavami
Sambhavami yuge yuge. Please read the translation.
to deliver the pious
To deliver the pious
and to annihilate
and to annihilate
the miscreants
the miscreants
as well as to re-establish the principles
to re-establish the principles
of religion. I myself appear
I myself appear
millennium after millennium.
millennium after millennium. So here we talked about how Lord Krishna is stating when he appears and why he appears. So what's the first reason he gives as to why he appears? What's the first reason?
The pious.
To deliver the pious. The second reason?
To annihilate
Annihilate the mystery.
Okay. And when we read the purport, what is Krishna's definition of who is pious? Who is sadhu? Who is a sadhu?
A person who has Krishna consciousness wholly and fully.
Yes. A person who is practicing Krishna consciousness earnestly is considered by Krishna to be a sadhu. So what is Krishna's definition of Dushkritam?
People who do not care for Krishna consciousness.
People who do not care for Krishna or to practice Krishna consciousness is Krishna's definition of Dushkritam. So we read one of the shlokas in chapter 7 where Krishna gives the definition of Dushkritam. What is one of the words he uses to define Dushkritam?
Mudha.
Mudha. And another word?
Naradama.
Naradhama. So Krishna is saying those people who do not practice Krishna consciousness, he considers them to be foolish. Mudha means foolish. Naradhama means lowest of mankind. Krishna is saying they are very much an animal actually. Because the purpose of human life is to practice Krishna consciousness. The purpose of human life is not to live like an animal. What are the 4 things that an animal does?
Eating, sleeping, defending, reproduction.
Yes, eating, sleeping, defending, and reproduction. Do human beings do the same 4 things?
Yes.
Yes. So if all our life from birth to death is spent only taking care of these 4 things, are we human beings or are we animals?
Like animals.
Animals.
We're like animals, right? Which means Krishna's expectation is that if you are occupying a human body, you must be practicing dharma. So what is the definition of dharma? We read from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7.
Having right intention.
Having the right intention. Okay, what is dharma?
We are following the 4 pillars of dharma.
4 pillars of dharma. I want the definition that we read from Srimad Bhagavatam.
Regulations established by Lord.
The rules and regulations established by the Lord. And who is giving this definition? Huh?
Parasharam.
No. Who is giving the definition of religion?
Krishna himself.
Krishna.
What we read from the Bhagavatam was in the context of the pastimes of Ajamil, where Ajamil is a pure Brahman who later participates in very degraded activities, giving up his wife and marrying a prostitute. He chants his son's name, Narayana, at the end of his life. And 2 sets of personalities come to fight over his body. Vishnu's servants come and Yamaraj's servants come. And who loses that battle?
Yamaraj servant.
Yamaraj's servants lose. Why do they lose?
Because they are scared of Vishnu, Narayana.
Because they heard Ajamil chant the name of Narayana during his last breath.
So when someone is chanting the name of the Lord or remembering the Lord at the time of death, then the servants of Yama do not have jurisdiction. The servants of Vishnu come to pick up that body. So in this case, what happens is, because the Yamadutas are defeated, they go back to their master Yamaraj and protest and say, what kind of nonsense is this? How can you call this dharma? He led an abominable life. How can he be taken to Vaikuntha? That means anybody can recite the name of the Lord at the time of death and lead a most abominable life and then exit this planet. At that time, Yamaraj tells them, what is dharma? Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. Meaning, dharma are the rules and regulations established by the Lord himself to help the human beings achieve Krishna consciousness. Does dharma apply to animals?
No.
No.
Why? It does not apply to animals?
Because
they cannot discriminate between what is right, what is wrong.
They do not have the ability to discriminate right and wrong.
They are into bhog yonis, so they are actually getting their results of their karma. So karma does not apply to them.
Yes, karma does not apply to animals. So that means dharma was established specifically for human beings. So human beings have to follow the rules and regulations of the Lord. That is, if we don't want to degrade ourselves into animal life. So we've spoken earlier that our conduct in this life decides our body in the next life, correct?
Yes.
So you will get a body in the future based on two things. One is your own desire, and two is what you deserve. What you deserve means what has been your past karma, combined with what is your desire. So we talked about the examples of Narada Rishi's Kubera's two sons, Navadvipa, Nalakuvera and Manigreva. Since they enjoyed being naked, that desire was converted to them taking on the bodies of trees. That is how Narada Muni cursed them. So depending on our desire plus our karma, these two factors determines the kind of body that you take up in your next life. So which means dharma is only meant for human beings to follow. Which means anybody who's not following dharma is Dushkritam. Lowest of mankind, Naradhama, Moodha, foolish. So anybody who is not following Krishna's instructions, Krishna comes to destroy them. So there are three reasons that the Lord has given. The first reason is Paritranaya Sadhuna. Second reason is Vinashaya cha Dushkritam. Third reason is Dharma Samsthapanarthaya. He comes to re-establish dharma. So we now know what is the definition of dharma. Then we talked about how 6 questions are posed to Suta Goswami in Naimisha. Why are the sages gathered in Naimisha?
Kali Yuga is coming, so how to save people?
Because?
To gather the knowledge with Suta Goswami from Sukadeva Goswami. And
the Yuga has started and they are worried. Why are they worried?
Because people in Kali Yuga have no patience, have no age, no capabilities. I mean, there are all those good things which were happening in the earlier ages. Those are lacking in the people of Kali Yuga. So they were worried about their deliverance.
So the sages were worried that Kali Yuga has begun and they already knew that the situation is going to get very bad. Lifespan will reduce to 25 years in the future. People will die by the time they reach the age 25. Their memories will be non-existent. Their intelligence will dwindle. They will be experiencing a lot of calamities. They will not have sufficient food and water. And therefore, they will be in an extreme weakened state by the time Kali Yuga ends. So the sages are worried. And because they are worried for humanity, they ask 6 questions of Suta Goswami. What are those 6 questions that they ask? They are seeking answers to 6 questions. What are those 6 questions? Those who attended morning class can answer.
What is the purpose of life?
What is the purpose of life? Yes, and then?
What are the essence of all scriptures?
What's the essence of all scriptures? Then?
Why did Krishna came?
Why did the Lord himself come?
Here.
4th question.
Krishna pastimes.
What are Krishna's pastimes? 5th question.
What are the other Krishna avatars?
What are the other avatars? And last question.
After Krishna left, where did Dharma take place?
Where has Dharma taken shelter? So the 6 questions that the sages of Naimisha ask Suta Goswami is, what is the proper welfare for a human being? And the answer to that question, we read a shloka in Srimad Bhagavatam last week. What is the answer to this question? What is the one and only duty of a human being?
Surrender to the Lord.
Krishna.
Surrender to the Lord. Anybody else?
To do all the activities to please the Lord.
To do all the activities to please the Lord. Anyone else?
Srimad Bhagavatam.
Harinam Sankirtan.
Harinam Sankirtan. So we read a specific shloka where Suta Goswami answers this question, what is the path to welfare? Which means, what is the duty that a human being has to perform? Which is the most important duty. And that trumps all other duties, is that we must learn to love and serve the Lord without any motivation and without any interruption. Ahai tuki apratihata. Ahai tuki means without any material motivations, we should worship, love, and serve the Lord. And we should do this without any interruptions, without any break. Which means we should not worship the Lord when we want something from Him. We should worship the Lord all the time. That is the dharma of a human being. What is his answer to the second question? So the question that the sages ask is, in our culture, we have so many scriptures. And we know in Kali Yuga, people will not have the intelligence, the memory power, or the lifespan that is required to study, understand, comprehend, and apply the Vedas in their personal lives. So can you please tell us what is the essence of all of the Vedic scriptures? And Suta Goswami answers this question by saying, the essence of all the Vedic scriptures is to understand that the Supreme Lord has 3 features. His Brahman feature, which is attractive to the Jnanis. his Paramatma feature, which is attractive to the yogis, and his feature as Bhagavan, which includes the Brahman and the Paramatma in it, is very attractive to the devotees. So Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan represents Sat, Chit and Ananda. Sat means eternity. Chit means knowledge. And Ananda means bliss. All three of this put together, Sat, Chit, Ananda, is Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Paramatma does not exist in the spiritual world. Paramatma only exists in the material world because the Lord has to come down as a witness for everything that we do. And if we have purified our consciousness and gone back to Vaikuntha or to Goloka Vrindavan, we do not need Paramatma anymore. So Paramatma feature of the Lord exists as long as there is this material cosmos. The Brahman feature of the Lord is nothing but the effulgence. Effulgence means the bright light that naturally emanates from the Lord's body. That is called Brahman. So the Jnanis are only interested in the Brahman feature of the Lord, and therefore when they associate with this Brahman feature, which is the formless aspect of the Lord, they do not experience eternal bliss. Their relationship, actually there is no relationship with the Lord. You cannot have a relationship with the effulgence emanating from the Lord's body. The only thing you experience in Brahman is a lack of anxiety. In the Paramatma feature of the Lord, which the yogis are attracted to, the yogis are simply meditating on their own self as well as the super self, the super soul. So again, because the super soul only exists in the material world, they do not develop a lasting relationship with the Lord, which means only the devotees of the Lord are experiencing a relationship with Bhagavan, where there is give and take. There is no concept of relationship in Brahman, and there is no concept of relationship in Paramatma. Therefore, Suta Goswami says, these are the three features of the Lord. That is the essence of all of the Vedic scriptures, that the Lord has three features, but the Lord is complete in his feature as Bhagavan, because Bhagavan includes all three, Sat, Chit and Ananda. So, to that third question, why did Krishna come? Here Krishna says why he comes. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna doesn't talk about another reason why he comes, but the Acharyas give us the reason why he comes. We discussed that in the last class. What is another reason that the Lord comes? What does the word Krishna mean?
All attractive.
All attractive, which means Krishna comes to attract the Jivatmas back to him. So when Krishna comes down as himself, he comes down so that he can advertise himself and remind us, do you remember me? You used to be so happy with me in Golok Vrindavan. What are you doing here? Don't you wish to come back to me? So the Lord performs his leelas to attract our attention so that we may start practicing
Bhakti.
So that's another reason why the Lord comes. He comes to attract his devotees so that they are attracted to him, they begin to practice Krishna consciousness, and eventually join him back in the spiritual world. So that's what we discussed. Right? And here, Krishna says, Sambhavami yuge yuge. I come with a certain frequency. It's on my calendar. I come to each of the universes. I visit each of the Brahmas in each of the universes. So the Lord is constantly traveling, performing his leela some way or the other. Once he's wrapped up here, he's gone to the next material universe to go and knock on the door there and attract the attention of the other Jivatmas and say, come back to me. Right? So, paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. We also talked about avatars. What is the meaning of the word avatar?
Incarnation.
Incarnation, yes, but we talked about a specific meaning of the word avatar. Avatar literally means a spiritual personality that descends from the spiritual world into the material world. Such a descent is called avatar. So I'm hearing some static from somebody's phone. So please keep yourself on mute if there is a disturbance in the background. So avatar literally means that personality that descends from the spiritual reality into the material reality. And we talked about the context of the entire Bhagavatam. How the Bhagavatam was spoken for the first time or revealed in just 4 shlokas to Lord Brahma by Vishnu himself. When Brahma is created and appears on the lotus flower, Brahma doesn't know what he is supposed to do. Who he is? Why is he there? He's all by himself in this universe, sitting on this lotus flower, thinking, what am I supposed to do? So he thinks he will find the answer to his question by going into the lotus stem. And as he begins his journey, he realizes there is no end to that stem. So he stops his journey and comes back up. And at that time, he hears the waves of the ocean. And they were making the sound, tapa, 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 indicating to him that he has to begin his meditation. So he begins his meditation, and Lord Vishnu reveals the Chatushloke, the 4 shlokas that summarizes the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. Just like the Bhagavad Gita itself in chapter 10 has 4 shlokas that summarizes the entire Bhagavad Gita. Shlokas 8, 9, 10, 11 in chapter 10. So similarly, the Bhagavatam has 4 shlokas that summarizes the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. These 4 shlokas Lord Vishnu reveals to Brahma. And then Brahma begins the process of secondary creation. Why secondary creation? Because the universes have all been created already by Mahavishnu. So now Brahma has to begin by creating the 5 elements. And then his journey of secondary creation begins. Then we talked about how this little parrot has been listening to Srimad Bhagavatam when Lord Shiva is speaking about the immortality that one gains by simply listening to Srimad Bhagavatam. And Parvati wants to be immortal, and so she requests her Lord to recite the Srimad Bhagavatam so that she may also achieve immortality. So one day, as Parvati Devi is meditating, her guru comes, Vamadev. There are variations of this pastime. In one pastime, it says Narada Muni instigates her. At that time, Parvati Devi is glorifying her husband, her consort, Shiva, and saying what a perfect being he is, and what a perfect consort he is. And at that time, Narada Muni smiles and asks her, and she tells him also that there is nothing that he conceals from me. He tells me everything. And at that time, Narada Muni smiles and tells her, have you ever asked him, why is he wearing this garland of skulls around his neck? Whose skulls are they? And Parvati Devi thought, my God, I have never thought about this. And Narada Muni says, those skulls are of ladies. Now you can imagine the minute you say that to a lady, how that is going to go down. So she asks Lord Shiva, my dear Lord, I understand that the garland of skulls that you're wearing around you are the skulls of ladies. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? And Lord Shiva ignores her question. He does not respond. She asks the next day. She does not get a response from Lord Shiva. She asks the 3rd day. By now she is a little upset that Lord Shiva is not responding to her question. At that time, Lord Shiva says, these skulls that I'm wearing around my neck are actually your skulls. Every time you took on a body and you gave up your body, because I'm so attached to you, I am wearing them around me. At which point Parvati asks, I've had so many bodies, what about you? And Lord Shiva says, but I am immortal. I don't take birth and I don't die. And she says, why? What is so special? And he says, because I'm always listening to Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm always meditating on Srimad Bhagavatam, on the glories of Lord Krishna's pastimes, and therefore I am immortal. And immediately Parvati says, I want that immortality. At which point Lord Shiva says, well, the Bhagavatam, I have to be careful where I speak it, because if others hear it, they will achieve immortality. So let's go to Kailash. It's just you and me, and I will recite and narrate the Bhagavatam. So they happened to be in Mount Kailash. And there was this little parrot that was hatching out of an egg. And as Lord Shiva begins to narrate the Bhagavatam, this parrot is also listening to the Bhagavatam. So Lord Shiva has narrated the Bhagavatam all the way up to Canto 10, which contains all of the Leelas of Lord Krishna. And until then, Lord Shiva had instructed Parvati Devi, when I recite the Srimad Bhagavatam, I will frequently go into a trance. But I need to know that you're listening to me, and you have to consciously respond and let me know that you're listening to me by saying, So this is called Umkar. So that's the promise that Lord Shiva extracts from Parvati in return for narrating the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimati Parvati Devi has to constantly let Lord Shiva know that she's listening. So she's listening all the way up to Canto 10, where all the childhood pastimes of the Lord are happening. And Canto 11 begins. And Parvati Devi falls asleep. And Lord Shiva is in a trance, and he is hearing, Who is saying this? The parrot. So when Lord Shiva completes the 12th canto, which is the last canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Parvati Devi wakes up and says, my dear Lord, but you didn't tell me anything after Lord Krishna came. What happened after that? And he tells her, what do you mean? I didn't tell you. I have recited the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. And in the end, he then asks her, did you fall asleep? And she says, yes, I think I did. And he says, if you fell asleep, who was giving that Umkar? That's when Lord Shiva sees that there is a parrot above him. And he chases the parrot, and the parrot runs into the ashram of Srila Vyasadeva and enters the mouth of Vyasadev's wife and occupies Vyasadev's wife's womb for 12 years. And in the womb, this parrot we talked about is actually Shuka, Leela Shuka. From the spiritual world, this Shuka parrot, a she parrot, is the personal parrot of Srimati Radharani. So the same parrot enters the womb of Vyasadev's wife and stays there for 12 years. During those 12 years, from within the womb, Shukadev is instructing his father and correcting his mistakes as he's compiling the Vedas. Therefore, the father tells the child, don't you think it's time for you to come out? You seem to be quite intelligent and competent. And the child refuses. The child, what is the reason that the child gives inside the womb? I do not want to be contaminated by Maya Devi, because if I come out, I will forget Krishna. The minute I make my entry into this world, I will be forced to forget Krishna, and therefore I will continue to reside in the womb. Then Narada Muni eventually coaxes Shukadev to come out of the womb. It is said in our scriptures that even when we are in the womb of our mother, it's an extremely painful, uncomfortable place to be. And if you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are certain verses that describe how much pain that the Jivatma goes through as an embryo developing within the mother's womb. And it says that the embryo is praying to the Lord, my dear Lord, please get me out of this God-forsaken place. I'm not happy here. I promise you, if you release me from this womb, I will worship you eternally. But what happens when we come out of the womb of our mother? We are exposed to Maya Devi, and we immediately forget that promise that we made to the Lord, that if he releases us, we will come back to him. So we forget the Lord immediately after we come out of the womb. So this is why Shukadev Goswami did not want to come out of the womb. So he goes into the forest and Vyasadeva sends his disciple to attract him back by reciting a shloka that describes the beauty of Lord Krishna when he returns from his cowherding pastimes. And hearing this, Shukadeva Goswami goes back to Vyasadeva, and Vyasadeva narrates the Srimad Bhagavatam to his son, Shukadeva. And then Parikshit Maharaj has been cursed to live only for 7 days. So Shukadeva Goswami, who has heard the Bhagavatam twice, once as a parrot from Lord Shiva, and the second time from his father Vyasadeva, narrates the Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit. And in that audience, both Vyasadeva and Suta Goswami are listening to the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then we come to the stage where the sages are in Naimisha and Suta Goswami comes there. And when Suta Goswami is posed these 6 questions, he begins the process of narrating the Srimad Bhagavatam. And in the audience is Srila Vyasadeva. So Vyasadeva has listened to the Bhagavatam being narrated by his own son Shukadeva, and now he's sitting for a second time listening to the Bhagavatam being narrated by Suta Goswami. It was after this that Narada Muni comes to visit Vyasadeva and encourages him to write something that glorifies the Lord, to write something that talks about the Leelas of the Lord so that it is attractive for the Jivatmas in the future. Up until then, the Bhagavatam was just orally recited. At that point, Narada Muni talks about his own history of how he achieved the status of Narada Rishi and had the benediction of traveling all over the universe to do nothing but preach. Hearing this, Vyasadeva writes the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we talked about 6 different types of avatars. What are the 6 types of avatars?
Leela avatar.
Leela avatar. Then give examples of Leela avatar.
Narsimha.
Vamana avatar. Okay. Then what's another type of avatar?
Purusha avatar.
And who are the Purusha avatars?
Karonadakashayi Vishnu, Karodakashayi Vishnu, Kshirodakashayi Vishnu.
Very good. Then we also talked about one more category of avatars.
Gunavatar Vishnu.
And who are the Guna avatars?
Shiva, Brahma.
Brahma, Vishnu.
Shiva represents which Guna?
Tamas.
Ignorance.
Tamogun, because you need to be in ignorance to destroy. Lord Brahma represents which Guna? Rajas, because you need to be under the influence of Rajogun in order to create. So that means one more Guna is left, which is Sattva Gun. Maintenance. So of the 3, which is the most difficult to do? Creation, maintenance, or destruction? Maintenance, right? Because it takes a lot of effort to maintain once something is created. Lord Vishnu takes on the role of maintenance as well as the Guna avatar. So we talked about Guna avatars, Purusha avatars, Leela avatars, 3 more. Shakti-Avesh avatars. What's the meaning of Shakti-Avesh avatars?
Potency of the Lord.
These are Jivatmas who are empowered
by the
are
Lord.
given special empowerment to represent the Lord. So examples of Shakti-Avesh avatars,
Narada Muni.
Narada Muni. Another example,
Lord Hanuman.
Lord
Hanuman.
Parasharam.
Hanuman is not considered a Shakti-Avesh avatar. He's a Jivatma devotee.
Brahma. Lord Brahma.
Brahma is not considered Shakti-Avesh avatar of the Lord.
Srila Prabhupada Maharaj. Srila Prabhupada Maharaj.
Srila Prabhupada, that's an interesting question. We don't have the answer to that question yet. It will be
Veda
revealed in
Vyasa.
the future. Vedavyas is a Shakti-Avesh avatar. Parasharam is Shakti-Avesh avatar. Buddha is Shakti-Avesh avatar. Kalki is Shakti-Avesh avatar, or will be Shakti-Avesh avatar. Okay, so that's 4. 2 more.
Yuga Avatar.
Hmm?
Yuga Avatar.
Yuga avatar. So the Lord takes different colors. In Satya Yuga, he took on the complexion of
Red, Rama.
white.
White.
In Treta Yuga, he takes on the complexion of
Red.
red. In Dwapara Yuga, he takes the complexion of black. And in Kali Yuga,
Yellow.
and who is the Kali Yuga avatar of Lord Krishna?
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yes, he's also called the Gupta avatar. And then the final avatar is Manavantar avatar. So Lord Brahma's day is divided into 14 segments. And each of those 14 segments is overseen by one particular Manu. So the Manavanta avatars are also avatars of the Lord. Okay. So in chapter 3 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Suta Goswami has answered the questions of what is the purpose of life, what is the essence of all of the Vedic scriptures. He's now going to answer the 5th question. What are the other avatars of the Lord? Because the rest of the Bhagavatam is going to be about Lord Krishna, and specifically the Canto 10, which is the largest canto, is going to be all of about Lord Krishna and his Leelas. So here, Suta Goswami talks about how the Lord comes as his universal form, or Virata Purusha, and from there he charts down the sequence of the various Vishnus. What happens when, what is associated with what, all of that is given in the 3rd chapter of Canto 1 of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he begins to speak about the various avatars. The 24 avatars that we are going to talk about now. So he talks about this very, very briefly, and we will also do the same thing. So very first avatar is what is called the Adi Purusha. Adi Purusha is none other than Mahavishnu. So that is the very first avatar of the 24 avatars. So this is the Adi Purusha avatar. And the second avatar are the Sanat Kumaras. The Sanat Kumaras are the very first children of Lord Brahma that were created through his mind. So birth can take place in different ways, including producing other Jivatmas through the mind. So these are the 4 Kumaras. They have taken the vow of celibacy. Although Lord Brahma creates them for the purposes of procreation only, these 4 Kumaras called Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumar. Lord Brahma creates them because he's supposed to start the process of secondary creation, which means impregnating the universe and the material planets with life, including human beings. That process has to start. But his 4 sons refuse. They say, no, 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 no. We are not interested in procreation. We want to remain celibate, and therefore they are eternally depicted as being little infants who are highly self-realized souls and who are always meditating on Lord Krishna. So after the 4 Sanat Kumaras, the next avatar is Narada Rishi. As we said, Narada Rishi is the Shaktiavesh avatar of Lord. He is depicted in the form of a Rishi, a sage, who's always carrying the tambura with him. He's always doing some kirtan. He's always telling Harikatha. And he's always, wherever he is going, he's always carrying the message of Lord Krishna with him. His purpose is to enlighten the Jivatmas so that they may be attracted to go back to Krishna. So that's Narada Muni. The next avatar of the 24 avatars is Naranarayana Rishi. This Naranarayana Rishi, they are the they are twins, actually, the twin sons of Kardama Muni and they actually reside in Badrikashram, and their sole purpose is to practice austerity. And the purpose that they come and they eternally reside on planet Earth in Badrikashram is for the benefit of planet Earth, right? So that is the incarnation of the twin stages called Nara and Narayana. They are always in meditation on Lord Vishnu. After this Naranarayana Rishi comes Kapil Dev, Kapil Muni actually, who is the son of Kardama Muni and Devahuti. Devahuti and Kardama Muni, they get married, and Kardama Muni actually is very reluctant to get married because he's busy practicing Krishna consciousness, but he gets convinced to do so. And of course, after marriage, Devahuti wants a son, and Kardama Muni meditates and they have the son, and this is actually Lord Vishnu himself. So the minute Kapila Muni reaches of an age where he can take care of his mother, Kardama Muni leaves his wife and goes back to his meditation on Lord Krishna. So at that time, Devahuti actually gets upset that her husband has left her. And she begins to ask questions of her son. So Kapila Muni actually sits on the Vyasasana and instructs his own mother on Sankhya philosophy, which is the philosophy of observing the material things and understanding the greater purpose of life. So this is Kapila Muni. So there is an entire set of chapters that are dedicated to Kapila Muni's teachings to his mother, Devahuti, that Srila Prabhupada frequently references in his lectures. After this comes Dattatreya. Dattatreya is the son of Atri and Anushuya, the wife. And actually the wife prays to Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu and Lord Brahma to send her a son. And this Dattatreya is actually representing all three, Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. And what is the purpose that Dattatreya comes? He is considered, he is also known as Trimurti or Tridev, and he is specifically come as an Avadut. Avadut means a teacher who does not apparently live by the principles of Dharma. Externally for us, when we observe, they act and conduct themselves in ways that may not make sense to us. So because he is considered an Avadut, he is also considered the Guru for all other Avaduts after himself. After Dattatreya comes Yajna. It is said in the scriptures that sometimes it so happens there is no Jivatma that qualifies for certain positions in the demigod realm. So sometimes nobody qualifies to take the position of Lord Brahma, or nobody qualifies to take the position of Indra. At that time, Lord Vishnu himself occupies that particular post. So in this case, Yajna, who is a personification of ritual sacrifice, Lord Vishnu is also known as Yajna Purusha. It is said that during the rule of Swayambhu Manu, there was a period that was quite difficult, where there were not sufficient Jivatmas who were qualified to take the roles of the demigods. And therefore, Lord Vishnu comes to perform the role of Lord Indra. So Lord Vishnu becomes Indra himself, and with the assistance of Yamadev, who is his son, and all the other demigods, he institutes the practice of sacrifices, yajna, fire sacrifice, ritual sacrifice. So this is Yajna Purusha. It is actually the Lord playing the role of Indra. So after this Yajna avatar, the next avatar is Rishabhadev. Rishabhadev is not only an avatar of Lord Vishnu, but he is also the founder or the primary Tirthankara of the Jains. So the Jains worship Rishabhadev as the first of the 24 Tirthankaras. The Jains worship 24 Tirthankaras. Of that, the very first Tirthankara is Rishabhadev. So Rishabhadev comes to talk about the path of meditation, about controlling the mind senses. And he preaches to his own sons to follow the path of meditation and self-control. So this is the purpose of Rishabhadev appearing as one of the avatars. So after Rishabhadev, there is a personality by the name Prithu, King Prithu, that appears after Rishabhadev. So it is said that during one of the Manu's reigns, there was one particular king who was so bad as a king that there was so much adharma that even vegetation was not growing on planet Earth. And at that time, the Brahmanas pray to the Lord to rectify the situation, because they knew that the king was incapable of providing good governance and being a dharmic king. So this Prithu comes as the son of the king, who is the decadent king. So Lord Vishnu himself comes as the son of this king to re-establish dharma and to also re-establish vegetation and greenery on planet Earth. So this is the avatar of Prithu Maharaj, which is an avatar of Lord Vishnu. So after Prithu Maharaj, the other avatar is the Matsya avatar. The Matsya avatar, I'm sure all of you know, this avatar primarily comes to rescue Vaivashvata Manu, who is lost. The world is inundated, and he is asked to construct a boat and load it up with all of the various species for the purposes of continuation of progeny across all of the species. So that is actually Matsya avatar. So after Matsya avatar comes 3 avatars simultaneously, beginning with Kurma avatar. Kurma avatar is the Lord taking the form of a tortoise and offering his shell to become the base for the churning of the ocean, with the demons on one side and the devatas on the other side. So this is Kurma avatar. And during the churning process, what happens? The poison comes out first. And there are a lot of objects that come out during the churning process. Of course, the poison is taken in the throat by Lord Shiva, hence he's called Nilakanta. But one of the other personalities that comes out of this churning is Dhanavantri. Dhanavantri is considered the lord of herbs and Ayurveda. So those who are seeking to regain their good health generally worship this avatar of Lord Vishnu as Dhanavantri. And then the third avatar out of these three avatars that come together is Mohini, where Lord Vishnu comes to trick the demons to give up the pot of nectar so that it can be distributed to the demigods first. So that is the Mohini avatar. It's Lord Vishnu himself, just representing himself in his female form. And that's what happens. This is the, there is a story behind this of Rahu Ketu also. They drank the Amrit and then they get their heads chopped off, and one goes to the one side of the moon and the other goes to the other side of the moon. So this is the Rahu Ketu, the head and tail separated. After this is the Hayagriva avatar. Hayagriva avatar is the avatar of Vishnu with the body of a man and the head of a horse. And here he is considered to be the god of wisdom and knowledge. And he primarily comes to kill two demons called Madhu and Kaitaba. These demons actually steal the Vedas from Lord Brahma and hide it under the ocean. And Lord Brahma seeks help from Vishnu, and Vishnu comes in his form as Hayagriva to kill the demons and to bring back the Vedas to Lord Brahma. So after this Kurma avatar and the Hayagriva avatar comes Lord Narsimha, who kills Hiranyakashipu. After Lord Narsimha comes Lord Vamanadev, who sends Bali Maharaj to Patalok, which is the lowest planetary system of the 14 planetary systems. And then comes Parasharam. Parasharam is considered a Shakti-Avesh avatar of the Lord. And Parasharam primarily comes to kill the Kshatriyas 21 different times because they were not providing good governance. So that's the purpose of Parasharam coming. After Parasharam comes Srila Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is a literary incarnation of Lord Vishnu, so he is also a Shakti-Avesh avatar. He appears in Dwapara Yuga. He compiles the Vedas. Along with that, he writes the 18 Puranas, including the Mahabharata and Srimad Bhagavad. So that is Vyasadeva. So after Vyasadeva comes Lord Ram. Sequencing wise, it may not matter, but Lord Ram. Then after Lord Ram comes Lord Balaram. After Lord Balaram, Lord Krishna. After Lord Krishna, Lord Buddha. And then after Lord Buddha, Kalki. So these are the 24 avatars that are listed in Srimad Bhagavatam that Sutta Goswami talks about in chapter 3 here. So you can read that. It would be good if all of you can actually read some of this. It's very interesting to read about the incarnations. Then in chapter 6, we talked about how Narada Muni is trying to influence Vyasadeva to write and compile the Srimad Bhagavatam. And in that process, he talks about how Lord Brahma himself describes the Bhagavatam in great detail to Narada Muni, his son. So here Lord Brahma is talking about the sequence of the Vishnus and all of the other creations and the sequence with which he executes on creating the secondary creation, right? I just want to read a few things that Lord Brahma tells his son Narada Muni towards the very end. He talks about the importance of bhakti. Yes, so Shloka 34. Brahma says, "O Narada, because I have caught hold of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, with great zeal, whatever I say has never proved to be false, nor is the progress of my mind ever deterred, nor are my senses ever degraded by temporary attachment to matter." So Lord Brahma is telling his son Narada, as long as we are worshipping Lord Krishna, we will always be protected. Our senses will not degrade and our mind will not trick us. So it's important to understand this specific principle. Then he says, although I am known as the great Brahma, perfect in the disciplic succession of Vedic wisdom, and although I have undergone all austerities and am an expert in mystic powers and self-realization, and although I am recognized as such by the great forefathers of the living entities who offer me respectful obeisances, still I cannot understand him, the Lord, the very source of my birth. Lord Brahma is saying, yes, I am a great personality. I have great powers, but my powers are insufficient to understand my Creator. Then he says, therefore it is best for me to surrender unto his feet, which alone can deliver one from the miseries of repeated birth and death. Such surrender is all auspicious and allows one to perceive all happiness. Even the sky cannot estimate the limits of its own expansion. So what can others do when the Lord himself is unable to estimate his own limits? So Lord Brahma is telling Narada Muni, even the Lord does not understand himself. Even the Lord does not understand his own leelas. And therefore, the Lord, in order to try to understand himself and what the devotees are experiencing, actually comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Kali Yuga, because he wants to experience what the devotees are experiencing. Since neither Lord Shiva nor you nor I could ascertain the limits of spiritual happiness, how can other demigods know it? And because all of us are bewildered by the illusory external energy of the Supreme Lord, we can see only this manifested cosmos according to our individual ability. So Lord Brahma is telling his son, our own individual ability restricts us or limits us from trying to understand the Lord. We have already said that all of the Vedic scriptures say that it is very difficult to understand the Lord unless the Lord himself casts his merciful glance upon us and allows himself to be understood in some small fashion, but never completely. So then if you go to chapter 7, Brahma again talks to his son about all of the other incarnations. So here, if you read these incarnations, they are not all the 24, but they also talk about some additional incarnations here of Lord Vishnu. So all of this is here. So Lord Brahma is talking the Srimad Bhagavatam to his son Narada Muni. Suta Goswami is speaking the Bhagavatam to the rishis in Naimisharanya. Sukadeva Goswami is speaking the Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. And all of these three are parallel threads throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam. So these are like nested stories within stories within stories, or pastimes within pastimes within pastimes. So I want to conclude by talking about the 4 A's that we discussed in the morning class. That we will find Ananda as long as we do 4 things. We must remember as devotees of the Lord that these 4 things will help us practice loving the Lord, serving the Lord without motivation and in an uninterrupted manner. So the 4 A's are as follows. The first A is that we have to accept Lord Krishna as the Supreme Lord. The fact that all of us are coming on a weekly basis to talk about Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam convinces me that all of you have accepted Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maybe we may have doubts here and there, but Accepting the Supreme Lord is the very first step in the journey of spirituality. The second A is for us to align with Krishna's dharmic principles, which means we must do everything that is favorable to practice Krishna consciousness, and we must give up anything that is not favorable to practice Krishna consciousness. We talked about two Sanskrit terms last time, Anukul and Pratikul. So we must do everything that is Anukul, that is favorable for us as devotees of the Lord. And we must reject anything that is Pratikul, that takes us away from Lord Krishna. So the first A is we must accept Krishna as a Supreme Lord. The second A is we must align with Dharma. Both the Dharmas on the material platform as well as the spiritual platform. On the material platform, we have to follow the Varnashrama Dharma. On the spiritual platform, we should become devotees of Lord Krishna. The third A is that we must act in such a way that we're always trying to please Krishna. Our sole duty and responsibility is to make Krishna happy and satisfied with us. If we focus on making Krishna happy or satisfying Hrishikesha, the master of the senses, then automatically our senses will be satisfied. We don't have to divorce the two. Our priority should be to act to please Krishna. If we act to please Krishna, automatically we will get everything that we need to experience that bliss, even in this material world. And then the fourth A is about acting on behalf of Krishna. What does this mean, acting on behalf of Krishna? It means we must do everything to bring others into Krishna consciousness. So we have to preach as per our capacity. So imagine if a father has a few sons and one of the sons has left home, become a vagabond and lost. And one of the other sons goes out of his way to find this lost son and connect him back with the father. How pleased would the father be? So Prabhupada has said, you know, we talk about the concept of universal brotherhood. And Prabhupada would say, how can there be universal brotherhood without there being universal fatherhood? We cannot accept each other as brothers and sisters unless we first acknowledge that we have a single father by the name Krishna. So first we must have universal fatherhood, that there is only one God and we are all his children. If we begin with accepting this universal fatherhood, then you can actually experience universal brotherhood. So if we learn to love Krishna, automatically we will learn to love all the Jivatmas, and we would not wish to harm any other Jivatma, whether that is in the form of a human being or it's in the form of a mosquito. So if we see everything around us as belonging to Krishna, we would not cause harm to any other Jivatma. So everything has to begin with universal fatherhood first, before we can actually practice universal brotherhood. If we learn to love Krishna first, we will automatically love all of Krishna's children. That is the most important principle. And therefore, acting on behalf of Krishna is so important, and that pleases Krishna the most when we act on his behalf. So the 4 A's again are to accept Krishna as the Supreme Lord, to align ourselves with dharma as established by the Lord, to act in a way to please Lord Krishna and to act on behalf of Krishna. So with this important message to you, to remember these 4 A's all the time. Accept Krishna, align with dharma, act to please Krishna, and act on behalf of Krishna. If we do these 4 things, we will experience Ananda in this life. We don't have to hanker for Vaikuntha or Golok Vrindavan. Our anxieties will dissipate in this life itself. And we can experience this Paramananda in this life itself, as long as we follow this 4 A's. The 4 A's can also be summarized as always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. Because the minute we say Krishna, it includes all of Krishna's creation. So Krishna is not separate from his creation. Krishna is not separate from the Jivatmas. When you say Krishna, it includes all the Jivatmas because they all belong to him. So we'll stop here. We talked about the Kali Yuga avatar, which is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This Friday is Gaura Purnima, and